Hello and welcome to the Mindfulness in Politics Project, your short podcast to help you deal with stress and anxiety during these tumultuous times. Today, we're talking about the anxiety, the nervousness you feel when you have a big meeting or a big presentation. Your palms may get sweaty, your brain may fill with racing thoughts and worries, and sometimes it may feel overwhelming. I felt that. Josh, I know you've felt that, and we've used different tools to try to overcome it.
Yeah, that's right. And Igor, we've talked on here before about how that threat response kicks in, that fight or flight, that can really start to amp us up and make it more difficult to do our work in a good way. And that certainly applies to presentations, public speaking, high stakes moments as well. But I think sometimes people start to get in this mindset of saying, like, when I get super stressed out in these moments, that's a failure on my part, or that's a weakness, or that's something that other people don't deal with that I need to just get over and make it go away. And so I think one of the things that we want to do today is really shed light not only on why that's a completely normal, built-in evolutionary reaction, but also the ways in which that can actually not be a bad thing when it comes to delivering the kind of presentation that you want to. And so I want to at least give a little bit of sense of why that's happening so that you can understand why it's something that is neither in our control nor necessarily bad. So, when we're about to give a presentation, our brain treats that like a threat, like it would any other threat, because it's something that could go wrong. It's a big deal and it feels inherently a bit scary. And so, the amygdala, this almond shaped component of our brain, starts to send a signal to the hypothalamus deep in the center of our brain. And a few things start to happen. Our brains start to surge hormones like adrenaline. And also have other glands that start to release cortisol, which is kind of similar to adrenaline, but more of a long acting kind of a thing. And then as a result, there's all of those things that you've probably noticed in your body when you're in one of these high stakes and high stress moments. Energy level goes up, your heart rate or your blood pressure might start to rise. Your body actually starts sending blood into the muscles it expects is going to be involved in responding, which is why you might start to feel tingly, or you get those clammy palms or a little bit sweaty. Your motor nerves actually start communicating with each other faster, which actually might be a good thing when you need to be thinking on your feet. Your muscles start to tense, and you actually get sharper perceptions. Your body is trying to prepare for needing to be really agile and nimble in a response to that threat. But, again, that can be distracting. That can start to undercut your flexible thinking or your creativity. And it can even make you more worried about the outcome and get really focused on how things could go wrong in a way that takes attention and mental space away from what you need to be remembering in that moment, or sort of keeping your head in the game. So, Igor, why don't you tell us a little bit about why this matters so much and some of the ways that you have found to actually try to work this into your benefit?
And before we get into the tools of what you can do to manage that kind of response, what you're underscoring, Josh, is that having that response in the first place isn't any kind of failure on your part. It is literally how we are evolutionarily wired, that when we see a threat, our body creates this kind of response. Now, Josh, what I've done in the past, especially since I've been practicing mindfulness, is I've tried to feel that anxiety bubbling up, acknowledging it, not sweeping it under the rug. That I've found actually gives it more energy when I try to just, no, 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 go away. But I really kind of feel it in different parts of my body. I often feel it in my chest. I often feel it in my stomach. And then I just work on breathing through it. I take a couple of deep breaths in and out, and that triggers a part of your nervous system that really does a good job of bringing down that temperature. So to me, feeling where that anxiety sits in my body and just taking a few simple breaths, That small intervention has been really helpful.
Yeah, it's super helpful because just like there is that fight or flight response, that threat response that amps us up, our body also has a parallel or opposite system to try to calm us down. It's based, for people who care about the biology, around what's called the parasympathetic nervous system. But essentially, it's that relaxation response. And it tends to kick in a couple of minutes after our body perceives that the threat is no longer there. And so you can actually find ways to bring that on sooner, or to strengthen it, or to hone it when you feel like you're so amped up that it's actually not serving your purposes and you need to sort of ground yourself and get more calmed down. And some of the things you can do, exactly as you said, Igor, those breathing techniques. Particularly, researchers have found that when your exhale is slower than your inhale, it activates something called the vagus nerve, and it really starts to lower your blood pressure, lower your heart rate, and calm you down. And you can also do things like really trying to just locate yourself in the moment, feel what's happening in your body, your thoughts, your emotions, become more aware of that than you are ruminating about the specific thing that you're scared of. And those can really start to help you get to a calmer place a lot more quickly.
Josh, the other tool that I've used to really help me perform better, and I've integrated this into my meditations, is the practice of visualization. Now, we hear a lot about folks who are, let's say, practicing for a marathon or something like that, and they visualize crossing that finish line. That's one way to do it. But another way that research actually suggests is more effective is visualizing the process that you go through in order to be able to cross that finish line in the marathon. Everything from waking up early in the morning, putting on your training clothes, running that, I don't know how much marathon people run, 5 miles a day. That seems low. 20 miles a day to practice for that marathon. The way that I don't really run, the way that feels in your body. And the reason why that's effective is because it activates the very same parts of your brain, the motor cortex areas of your brain that are gonna be actually living that experience. And so you are creating memories as you're visualizing that happening. You're creating memories that actually allow you, once you're in the moment, to perform that action with greater confidence, more naturally. Uh, and the reason, Josh, and this is actually one of the most fascinating things that I've learned on this journey, is that your brain does not know the difference between you visualizing and really feeling that experience of running the marathon versus when you're actually running the marathon. And knowing that opens up so much possibility for us to really take advantage of process visualization in order to help train our brains to complete that task and to be better when we're actually there on that day.
Yeah, and the marathon analogy is really apt, Igor, because a lot of the research into this has actually come from the fields of athletic performance, and researchers and experts who are focused on how Olympic athletes or pro athletes can optimize their performance on the field or on the court or whatever it is. And one of the things they've really focused on is the relationship between intensity and performance. In other words, the more excited and amped up you get, how does that actually affect your performance? And this really surprised me because I always figured that really the more that you're in it and you're in the game and you're amped up, that would lead to your maximum performance. But actually, researchers have found that's not true. And what they found is that it's actually an inverted U curve, where if your excitement and your nerves are super low, you're probably not that focused, you're not that energetic, and obviously that leads to low performance. But equally, if it gets too high, you really start to see your performance drop off as well because of a lot of those nervous and stress responses that we were just talking about. And they found that there's this sweet spot in the middle where if you're intensity and your excitement is sort of at a moderate level, that is actually the zone. Athletes even call
Mm.
this being in the zone where you're going to get your maximum performance and really be able to deliver on the goals that you have. And so, you could call that the Goldilocks approach. Some traditions would refer to it as the middle way, but essentially trying to find that happy balance between relaxation and really alertness and focus is where you're going to find the best chances of being able to deliver that presentation in a way that's compelling, that meets your goals, and leaves the audience with a sense of your confidence.
I did not know about this research. Now, as I hear it, and I think back at some of the presentations or moments of high stress or intensity that I had, let's say, when I used to do a lot of TV, some of my most successful TV hits, the feeling that I had right before going on is, I think, exactly what you described, that it was a mix of excitement, nervousness, and the sense of, I got this. And all of that made my body feel like a little tingly. But I feel like you had to have all of those, at least in my experience, I had all of those ingredients. And that little mix, I think, is actually what you're describing.
Yeah, I found that too a lot in doing television, that particularly that the worst thing I could do during the commercial break, right before they were going to come to me, would be to try to run over and over again in my head all of the points I wanted to make and make sure I'd memorized it and got the order straight and hyper focus on the details or the content or the substance. It's kind of counterintuitive in a way when we're taught so much that preparation is key, which of course it is. But I found that if instead I took those moments and just kind of opened up like what I was thinking about to being like, here I am, look at this moment. This is where I am in this moment. This is an incredible privilege, and sort of what is this experience like, thinking about how this is going to feel even in retrospect 20 years from now, when you think about just the flavor of this experience really pulled me out of the ruminating pattern of hyper focus on the details in a way that ultimately led to my best moments.
Josh, on that note, in the weeks and months ahead, we are going to dive deeper into how to deal with stress and anxiety during these very uncertain times. And of course, we also want to hear from you. How are you managing, and what would be helpful in terms of integrating mindfulness into your daily life? Reach out to us at mindfulnesspolitics@gmail.com.